Neoplatonic movement. Ariosto has a chance, so there's a lot of Neoplatonism going on, but Ariosto has a chance to really reflect critically on this whole, the madness, the scene of the worth of man. But Ariosto is a poet who links more than Boiardo, I think. Ariosto is a great thinker. Ariosto is the other peculiarity of the Italian intellectual tradition, that the major thinkers are the poets. Yeah. So that the whole idea of rhetoric and philosophy, which is so debated even in the 19th century, 20th century, unless you go on and take seriously a guy that I really like, Merleau-Ponty, who understands how the history of the world and the philosophy of the world is a poetic history of the world, and in a very fundamental way.
Like Vico.
Like Vico. But they are. This Ariosto is an extraordinary thinker. His poem really puts forth one major theme, a lot of variations. We are in a labyrinth. Not only we're in a labyrinth when we read the Orlando Furioso, the poet will do everything he can to lose us along the way. You know, we have always to wonder about our control, our ability to keep the threads of the story. But he has one overarching idea, and the overarching idea is the question about freedom, the grand Renaissance myth. Are we free? And then he discovers the pleasures of captivity. So the heroes are always claiming freedom, or someone is freeing them, and then immediately they lapse into the form of bondage. This is an extraordinary poem. I mean, but to me, this is the fundamental intellectual passion of Ariosto.
Do you find in his focusing on themes of captivity or taking a traditional Christian hero and driving him insane out of love, that there are certain Renaissance humanist myths of self-possession, the rule of reason, the notion of the measure, that all this is... Yeah.
Absolutely. No, you're right. This is the primary target. Pico, Ficino, but also certain ideas about freedom. But he's a profoundly. You allude to the fact that you're saying that he takes a Christian hero, Orlando, or Roland, and the Italians call Orlando, and double him in Rinaldo, which of course is almost we said an imperfect anagram. It's the one letter of as if they were a double, the one of the double of the other. But he's a profoundly Christian poet, and I think that all these efforts that have come from a very peculiar tradition in Italy, meaning this liberal, or in the Italian sense of the word, right. The Croce, De Santis before him in the 19th century, at the beginning of the 20th century, Croce and so on, that tried to make him into the radical skeptic of the Renaissance. This is the fate to which even in Cervantes was subjected, and Cervantes is another profoundly religious spirit. I think that's has to be stressed. He is the targets are the myths of self-possession of the Neoplatonic philosophical tradition, Ficino, Pico, etc. But then there are also Luther. There is also Erasmus. There is Valla himself with their own versions of what is freedom or what is not freedom. If your students or your listeners want to go on reading this poem, they really should pay attention to all these ideas, these fluctuations in the poem between freedom and bondage to love, to fate, duty, and then you have Bradamante, who always tries to free Ruggiero, wants to seduce him, but Ruggiero who is always, falling aside, because there is the seduction of freedom, but there is the greater fascination exerted by the state of bondage, and he explores the psychology of the two.
Can I ask about the geopolitical situation in Italy or in Europe at the time, and whether Ariosto has also in mind the kings and princes that are engaging in a endless series of wars that don't have any grand purpose, like the fight between the Christians and the Muslims, but are really like these knights who are lost in forest, and that they're just looking for adventure or looking for occasions to prove their their worth, and in a certain sense looking for distraction, the way Pascal speaks about the need for diversion to relieve one's existential boredom. And one of the things in the Orlando Furioso is that the denunciation of the invention of gunpowder and the firearm, the macchina infernale or infernal macchina, this idea that the means of destruction have been so enhanced through the invention of gunpowder, and that if the people who are in charge of the geopolitical events that take place are of a mentality as Ariosto's knights seem to be, then we're all in deep trouble, because we're going to go on and on perpetuating conflicts more for the sake of our own distraction rather than real purpose.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think that from that point of view, actually, the powerful insight is by Pulci, who makes of all these heroes just toughies and vagrants who, they want to relieve so-and-so. The fact is that they want a good meal. They are going to steal your money, and they call it a gift, and they go on. I mean, this is the world upside down. I mean, it's an extraordinary kind of event. But you're right that there is this sense of, there's a strong moral sense that comes to the attacks against items which are very traditional in Italian thought, but also the Cusan, the donation of Constantine, which to Ariosto, as was for Dante, as was for Valla, as was for Cusan, it really means the kind of let's call it theocratic temptation of the church. To him, this is the cause of the real immorality. Because the confusion that it engenders, it tells you that you need not at all keeping differences, that there is really not a point, and it's a contradiction in terms with the very ecclesiastical structure of the church. On the one hand, we have a universe of differentiations and rank ordering. On the other hand, it says, no, let's just make a hybrid, and so he attacks all of this. So there's a moral voice. At the same time, the sense truly of because he takes the perspective of Ferrara, which becomes the metaphor. Ferrara, a provincial town that doesn't have a chance in the world scene, and so the irony is clear. Look, we think that we are so self-important at court. Meanwhile, there is events, as you say. The Christians and the Muslims, the fights about values, the recognition of the possibility of cultures coming together, fighting unavoidably, fighting with each other. This is that's the vision. That's the vision.
So it's very humorous. It's a digressionary kind of narrative. It's full of episodes, and it's polycentric. It doesn't really have a center of action, and it's
madness.
Really
Madness
is the center. Yeah, that's. Orlando goes mad at the very center of the poem.
Absolutely.
But of course it's an anti-center because it destabilizes. And this enchanted a number of readers across the centuries, including Machiavelli, who was actually Ariosto's contemporary, and felt very hurt that at the end of the poem, when Ariosto is imagining his homecoming and all the great writers of the day there to receive the ship that's returning home. And Machiavelli, who said that he left me behind, I
don't have the guts to say it over the radio.
We could say it in Italian and still get away with the FCC
I'm sure you
rules,
can.
But we won't say it.
You are, as Anna Maria used to tell you, it's so elegant when you say something in Italian.
But in any case, Machiavelli was someone who took seriously the possibility of a rebirth of virtù and political mastery and throw out the invaders and so forth. Ariosto didn't seem to share his hope that the princes of Italy could ever get it together enough to do that, right?
But also Ariosto had written an extraordinary critique of Machiavelli's political theory within the Orlando Furioso, so that by leaving him out, it's really a way of saying you are everywhere here. You are dismembered as the body of the Italian culture is supposed to be at Stanford. But
Giuseppe, can we then now move on to Tasso, because he deserves a very long long discussion, of course.
Is,
and he is obviously the heir, in a certain sense, also from Ferrara, like Ariosto, haunted by the achievement of his predecessor. In what way is the Gerusalemme Liberata different from, and at the same time continuous with, the Orlando Furioso?
Well, I think that Tasso had that's a great question, but this is this should be really a class, not the, we need a couple of hours to discuss this. Look, Tasso in the Gerusalemme Liberata really thought that the poem would be the turning point in the history of the epic, without a doubt. He makes it clear. The poem, Canto l'armi pietose, e il capitano, che il gran sepolcro liberò di Cristo. That's the beginning. I sing the reverend armies and the captain who liberated the great sepulchre of Christ. That's already the beginning is the Aeneid, one arma virumque cano. But you remember that the Orlando Furioso ends with the last line of the Aeneid. The death of Rodomonte is described in terms of Turnus,
yeah.
Exactly, the death of Turnus. So that almost Ariosto says, let's start with our own common matrix, Virgil, all over again. Somehow you missed something about it. Well, that's one little detail. But then the other thing is that whereas Ariosto is still pretending to write a dynastic poem for Alfonso, for the Este family, Tasso just completely forgets it. He just leaves around. He gets a grant from Alfonso d'Este, and he says, "Well, you really should try to emulate my hero, Godfrey of Bouillon." So the Orlando, but that's it. He's not interested in the dynastic, epic aspect. The third aspect that of the poem is that Ariosto from the start goes on telling the stories, tournaments, and so on, whereas Tasso goes on invoking Lucretius. There's the famous idea that he's writing and he has to use fictions, the famous language of, the child who is sick has to receive the medication with the rim of the glass sprinkled with sugar, sweet liquids, and he takes immediately, this is the third stanza after mentioning, so that he knows that he has to deal with two aspects, the double view of Rome, Lucretius and Aeneas, the double view of the world, an Epicurean view of the world. Lucretius is writing for the education of the young Neapolitan Epicurean Memmius, and the Virgilian idea of some kind of providentiality. But more than that, he's going to address the issue of atheism, which Ariosto raises very obliquely in the death of Rodomonte. Rodomonte has a quest for freedom, and Rodomonte is the hero of the atheist, because he understands, Ariosto understands the connection between freedom and atheism. And here, Tasso is going to review. He's so interested in the question of the sacred and his confrontations. He comes after the Council of Trent, and with a sort of triumphalist idea about the Catholic tradition. The Council of Trent really meant now we are going to humiliate the contemplative tradition of the Church. This is the argument of the Fathers in a very rough way. We have really been, the Renaissance meant the laissez-faire, anything can go. Now that's no longer the case. We have to go, and it's a make or break experience. We have to go, send missionaries all over the world, and the Battle of Lepanto becomes the crucial emblem of this triumph. The works of Titian, Tintoretto, Veronese give you a sense of the importance. Nothing like this in literature. So Tasso really wants to explore the possibility of the sacred, the idea of the confrontations of religious views. He faces the problems of the iconoclasts, the manipulation of icons by the Christian who had become a Muslim, Ismeno, all this passing from all of this taking place in that locus, in the desert, a place of idolatry, place of revelations, place of the wayfarers. So it's a completely different poem, because this is the poem of the sacred. That's what I would call it. With Ariosto, I call it the poem of freedom. And the interesting thing is that before he dies, around 1594, Tasso goes on writing the Mondo Creato, which he calls the Poema Sacro, but the real sacred poem, or the poem about the sacred, is really the Gerusalemme Liberata, and the question of images, the importance of images, and ultimately really mystical understanding.